You can read it to me while the plan is up. You don't have to share what you've written. You can just read it as you have the plan up.
He just needs to open it from a different
tab.
Yeah,
I need to open it from a different tab first.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
We've been keeping the documents. Everybody's been referring to them in different places and telling everyone, so.
Okay. What's key is, and I'm sure that Mr. Bernard also said this to you guys, but what's key is that you have a tight vision statement and that your plan links directly with that statement. You're going to have to back your vision up with whatever is in your plan. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to have sound reasoning for each of your decisions. So it's important that, you know, we start with where your vision is so we can look at how the plan is matching that vision.
The vision statement's where we've been spending the most amount of our time. Most of the meetings we've had have been just trying to develop the vision statement and get it real strong.
Okay. Toriel, if you're having trouble finding it.
I have it up now. No, I don't.
Okay. Jelani, if you have it, go ahead and read it so that we can keep moving because we don't have a lot of time.
Okay. Toriel, do you have it or you want me to read it?
Go ahead.
Okay, so our vision for the new Almwood district is to create a vibrant, cultured, engaged community with a that is multimodal, accessible environment for its range of diverse citizens, for the economically, for its range of diverse citizens, sorry. Old and new residents will be entranced by only a hold up. Oh, I'm so sorry. I made a change to this. I'm sorry. Old and new citizens will be entranced by the supply of amenities only a short walk away. A mixed income, middle class community ranging from young and low level workers to aging retirees.
Okay, read that one more time for me from the top. Thank you.
Okay. Our vision for the new Elmwood district is to create a vibrant, cultured, engaged community that is multimodal and accessible for its range of diverse citizens. Old and new residents will be entranced by the immense amount of amenities only a short walk away. The community will be a mixed income and multi-class community ranging from young to and low-level workers to aging retirees.
Okay, let's pull the plan up and see where we're at. Okay, so Toriel, can you walk me through the plan? What's happening with the plan?
So right now, what's happening with the plan is we're kind of over here by Madison and 9th Avenue. We're kind of trying to draw a gateway to the community over here by the yard stop and stuff like that. So what we have is the high-rise condos, of course, the Q-Mart, and we have these office buildings, the mid-rise and the low-rise, and then these floating apartments right here. So this kind of draws we're trying to draw like a gateway to the community to attract people inside. For example, like maybe if you're on the yard, if you're going towards the yard and stuff like that, and you see like an office building or a Q-Mart, you'll be like, oh, maybe I should come back here because they have a Q-Mart or they have an office building and it's convenient to you and stuff like that. It's just the high-rise buildings we think is going to attract more citizens deeper into the building, like towards our parks and retail and stuff like that. And the York Dragons, of course.
What about the housing? It seems like you've concentrated your housing on the north side of the site towards the church, whereas you got your park in the middle and you got your commercial stuff towards the south, towards Madison Street. Can you describe those decisions for me?
Right. So the reason why we did this is because we wanted a more like private section of housing towards like public open space and stuff like that. So that's why we separated that stuff. And the reason why we put the retail and stuff on Jefferson Street is because we want Jefferson Street closed. So the retail can put like stuff outside on the street and stuff.
So how often are you planning to close Jefferson Street?
Maybe during a rush hour, of course, so people can easily access the retail from the parks and stuff like that.
So that means if I'm looking at your plan, east-west, you're thinking about closing Jefferson during the most crucial parts of town. Is it just for those 2 blocks, or is it also where the Q-Mart is as well?
Well, we're not gonna close 9th Avenue. We're not gonna close Madison Street, and we're not gonna close this section right here.
Okay. Just be wary, because if you're planning to close that at rush hour, that's when the most cars and the most traffic is going to be on the street. And if you close the street during that time, you're going to force traffic jams in other parts of your area. So if that's something that you want to do intentionally, think about how you're going to work your way around the other issues that will come up. You may want to consider what might happen if you close that street at other times, whether it's at lunchtime or whether that's on the weekends. Have you also thought about how this COVID situation that we're in may affect retail, whether it's foot traffic? Because closing might be good. You're seeing a lot of different cities are closing their streets so that they can have people eat outside, so they don't have to bring as many people inside in a COVID environment. So you should be thinking in real time about how COVID might impact you as well. That might be something that somebody asked you about, okay?
Right, that's why we decided to close the street, because we want the restaurants to put, for example, we're gonna have a fine dining restaurant. Maybe they could put chairs out on the street, so and on the street and sidewalk, so people can eat outside. Because we know right now we're in phase 2, 50% capacity in restaurants. So maybe the other half can eat outside.
Okay, it's good. It's good that you have some thinking around that. So make sure that if that comes up, that you can flesh that out. I have a couple of urban design questions for you, and that's about the location of your parking. So let's start with Q-Mart, and actually this is a question for most of the group. What was behind the decision to include the Q-Mart? Why are we including the Q-Mart?
I guess I'll answer this. We're including the Q-Mart because it's pretty much a one-stop shop for everything that someone might need. And a lot of the community groups were already saying that access to retail was short. With the aging population, they didn't have the closest location was a 30-minute drive. And they're the most at risk for the coronavirus and should still be inside. So to leave a place that's only a block or 2 away from them so that they can walk to either have someone deliver products from the Q-Mart, like their medication and food, to them. Everything is within walking distance. And it can also be set up for the rest of the other members of the community to get all their food at one time, like any of the families. And they might have the capacity to set up food drives outside so that people can come drive along 9th Avenue and pick up food from the curbside and then keep it moving and just move through the community that way. So from our discussions, they were the most equipped to supply the community and surrounding area with the necessities that
And along those lines, who is the neighborhood liaison?
Me, William.
William. Which neighborhood group is going to benefit the most from the Q-Mart being there?
The old urbanist group.
I'm sorry?
The old urbanist group.
The old urbanist group. Why do you think that group, that the city council might be interested in what that group thinks?
Because since they're a lot older, they're more like the basis of the community, because they've been here longer than the younger generation. So, and plus, like since it's since the pandemic strikes, they need their medicine, and the Q-Mart provides them with a pharmacy. So.
What else does Q-Mart?
Sorry, this was Ms. Martinez. I was just going to ask William. William, how many people are in the old urbanist group? How many voters are part of that group?
I'm not sure.
There's 2 reasons why that question is important, and this is for the group as well as William. You need to be have this in the back of your mind. You should find the number of how many people are in the old urbanist group, but also why would the city council be interested in that group? And the question is really, what's the city council most interested in? Two things. They're interested in the tax revenue, which you already know, your project has to be successful, but they're also interested in votes. City council wants to get voted in. And who are the people that are going to vote the most? It's going to be the people with the most resources, with the most wealth, and also usually it's older residents. And so this, depending on how many there are, that could be a large voting block for that city council to be interested in. So what else is the QMARC providing to the old urbanists that you haven't mentioned yet?
And then maybe also the marketing director might have this information. So like economically, what is the QMARC providing for the old urban?
Right.
It provides most of what they need, everything they need, shopping-wise.
Where's my marketing director?
Beyond shopping-wise, what else is it providing for the people in the community?
It's in your book if you haven't found it. You gotta.
It provides a lot of entry-level jobs.
It provides employment opportunities. And so that's a key thing that particular group is going to be looking for. And that the city council is going to expect you to know and understand these links between those things, okay? You need to make that group happy, because if you make them happy, they're going to be more prone to vote for whoever the city council is if they approve your project. So you're selling it both to the old urbanists as well as to the city council. Ms. Martinez is right. Who is the marketing director?
I am.
Okay, hey Daniel, how are you? You good?
I'm good.
Okay, so I got a couple questions, and this is back to the parking because I started there. I'm looking at a lot of parking with the QMARC, and so it's interesting that you decided. I agree with your decision to put the condos closest to the yard with good views towards downtown, but how are you going to sell those high-end condo prices when their view out the back door is going to be to a parking garage? What's that going to feel like for those people who are paying the highest rent in your district?
I mean, I didn't think that it was that big of an issue facing like the parking towards where they're driving in, but we put the QMARC parking adjacent to the condo parking because it just flows right through.
Okay, it's an interesting decision with putting those two parking uses next to each other. That's true. But if you're either walking by that parking lot on Madison Street, or if you're driving, trying to take a right or a left onto 8th Street, that could get congested right at that corner, because you figure Madison Street has a lot of traffic on it, right? That's a main road. That's like your main street. And if people are trying to pull in and out of those parking lots off of Madison, that could be difficult. So that's just something that you need to think through and be ready for. And as far as the views are concerned, some of the things that you can get into and think about is how you might design those parking garages so that they don't look like ugly garages. You might be able to design them and talk about how you're treating the exterior. Okay, you can get into that level of detail when you're talking about your decision.
Okay.
I would say the same thing, because I would look at 10th Avenue as I'm heading up to that retail. And that street right behind the low-rise office building, in between there and the retail, if I'm walking up that street at 9 at night, let's say I have a late shift downtown, I get off the yard, right? Take that left up 10th Street, what's that going to feel like? What's that street feel like if I have to walk home up 10th Avenue, right? That parking there is going to be a little dark, a little dingy. I don't know what's going on there. So think about your use, what we call adjacencies, what's next to each other. And if you have to have a use like that, you need to be thinking about the lighting and how you're going to make that street feel like a place you might want to walk up and down early in the morning, late at night. Okay?
Okay.
Couple of other things. Let's move up the site now. Very interesting decision to have your parks centralized. I think that's a very interesting urban design decision. Can you talk to me about why you chose to do that? What are the benefits of that, and what may be bad about that as well?
What we were thinking is off of Jefferson Street, during that time period where it's closed off, people can eat at the restaurants, but it's only eat when you're outside, so you can use the park space as a dining option.
Okay, no, that's good. What other kinds of things might you program in the park? How are you going to manage social distancing in those parks?
We can have tables set up, 6 feet apart from each other, but maintain social distancing, but also having a space where they could dine in and enjoy their food as well with other people.
Okay. I'm noticing that you guys, it doesn't look like the homeless shelter is here. Is that correct?
There is a homeless shelter.
Oh, you're building the new shelter. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about that. Why did you decide to build a new shelter? And tell me why is it next to the church? And maybe I'll throw that back to the city liaison. What do you?
The homeless shelter is essential, especially in these times. As the CDC guidelines say, if homeless people are on the streets and without housing, it's extremely dangerous, not just them, but the rest of the citizens, because they would spread the virus, COVID-19, extremely quickly. We placed the new shelter next to the church because the church was offering assistance and help with maintaining, running, and facilitating the shelter. So the closer the new shelter is to the church, the easier it would be for them to do that.
So there's a management side of it, but more importantly, there's a safety argument for keeping the rest of the city safe. Now, I have a couple of problems that might come up because of that you might encounter. One, off the bat, is, and this is back to my marketing person, I don't know if you guys had conversations about this, but I'm looking at some townhomes and some podium apartments right next to and across the street from that shelter. How are you going to sell to Daniel? How are you selling those apartments when there's a homeless shelter right next door? Don't you think that those people might question the values and the rents that you want?
Well, our neighborhood is supposed to, it has mixed income. It's not supposed to be only like high-end resident, and it's more a residential space. So to have more townhomes in the area is pretty good in our opinion. I don't see the shelter as a problem, especially if it's mixed income and you're not living there as like a luxury. In luxury, you're there mixed income. You can afford, it's affordable housing and you can afford to live there. So I don't see them expecting like the shelter they wanted it, and so if they want it, it shouldn't be a problem to them.
Who wanted the shelter? Because there are some groups that wanted the shelter and some groups did not want the shelter. And you have to think hard about who those groups are that maybe push back against the shelter. Because again, you have to ask yourself, are those groups that are going to be voting for the city council in high numbers, or are they not going to be voting for the city council? Is it going to be easier for you to rent the higher end rate rental units? Because what may happen to you is people see that there's a homeless shelter next door. You may only get people who absolutely have to rent there at low rents, which is fine, but you might not be able to attract the people who are doing the market rate in those buildings, and that might not make your project pencil out in the long run. As a marketing manager, you may have trouble filling those apartments later. It's something that you're going to have a very clear explanation for. And I think you started to hit it, but you should make sure that you understand who is in support of that shelter and who is not, because the city council may give you a hard time based on your answer. So make sure that you have that information. Since we're on the topic of mixed income, affordable housing, for my financial analyst, where's my financial analyst?
I am right here.
That's you, Jelani?
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Yeah, okay, it's cut off on your name. Okay, what's the percentage of affordable housing that you have total, and how is it mixed into your apartment?
Would you like me to pull up the financial model so you can see it, or just read it off?
You can pull it up in a minute, but right now, since the plan is up, I
Okay.
just want to understand how are you mixing in affordable throughout your apartments, or are you locating more in certain areas, or how are you doing it?
Okay, so to start off with the first question, the podium apartments are going to be 15% affordable, 85% market rate, and the townhouses are going to be 18% affordable and 82% market rate. Now, as for where we're going to place these different affordable units, of course, properties that are going to be closer to the retail and other amenities are going to be higher prices, like, for example, the retail and the podium apartments located in between the retail and the mid-rise office building is definitely going to be market rate. But residential further away from those areas are going to be essential services, like the townhouses and the podium apartments closer to the homeless shelter. Those are going to be more, what's it called? Those are going to be the affordable spaces because they're generally located farther away from the amenities, and that lowers their value comparatively to the other properties, like the podium apartments located on the 3rd block right next to the York Dry Goods and the Q Mart and across the street from the parks. Then those would that would be a higher incentive or more demand to live in those places.
Okay. I think that's an interesting strategy. There's some logic to it. Just make sure that you're thinking about, it's good that you're planning to mix, okay? As a baseline, that's the right answer. You want to make sure that you're not concentrating affordable housing in one area. You want to try to mix it so you're not only are you sticking with your vision statement, but that's just the right thing to do, is to keep a mixture of incomes in your housing. So let's take a look at your pro forma, at your financial sheet, to see how it's shaking out.
Okay. Toriel, could you stop sharing, please?
As you're pulling that up, my one comment for everybody in the group is going to be to go back and make sure you understand for your role, that you understand what each of the groups wants and doesn't want, because you're going to get hit by the city council with questions that are ultimately going to link back to who's voting for them and who's not voting, who doesn't have as much voting power, as well as the tax revenue issue. So let's look here, and let's quickly, let me switch my thing around. All right, so you're at a 15.2.
Yes, sir. And 1,369,000 city revenue. So we're exceeding those demands in both categories. We're creating 33 affordable total residential units and 231 market units, and 120 beds inside of the homeless shelter, creating over 1,200 jobs. And scroll down. This is the total amount of market rate and affordable to, market rate to affordable buildings. Where is the total parking spaces? I'm just looking for.
It's 920. It's 920. So now I'm going to take off my city council hat and quickly put on my investor hat. If you guys recall, and I'm talking again mainly to my marketing guy, and Jelani is the financial guy now. If you remember, for most of these units, the years to absorb, essentially your horizon, we call it, was up to 3 years. Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
A three-year time frame. So when I'm looking at your affordable home, your affordable housing, your office, and then your market rate and luxury condos, you guys are leaving quite a bit on the table in terms of in terms of you could build a little more of that, it looks to me, and still be under your 3 years to absorb. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily a poor decision, but I think that you should look at your office especially, because you're heavily weighted towards residential. And you're going to get a question of, well, you know, why isn't there as much office? And if you scroll, even if you scroll down to your condos real quick.
The luxury condos here?
Yeah, 159. What did you test out the second condo building? What happened then?
I don't understand.
So I'm looking at your years to absorb, and you have essentially another year and a half. If you had built more luxury condos, you may have been able to push that number a little higher and still been under your years to absorb.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, your absorption rate is partially a measure of your risk. And what this tells me is that you're leaving a lot of potential revenue on the table for your market rate condo, your market rate townhomes, condos, and your office. You might have been able to push those.
I think we tried that, Justin. I think we did try that in class. And when the students put 2 luxury condos, they got a red mark because it was over 3 years to absorb. And so that was a concern. And I think it was the same when you added like 2 mid-rise, you were over that 3 years, 3-year absorption rate. Jelani, I don't know if you tested putting multiple low-rise office buildings though, because that one, like he said, there is only at 1.09. But I think that with 2 luxury condos, we were above that. They were above that 3, and that's why in their previous, like when they did it during school, that's why they only had 1 luxury high-rise and 1 mid-rise office.
So ultimately, these are not necessarily the wrong decisions. What it tells me, so I'm a developer. I think some of you might remember that. And the return that I get is a measure of risk, basically. So the more risk I'm taking, the higher a return I need to get, right? So it looks to me like you're potentially leaving risk on the table, which is okay. But what it means is one of your competitors might be willing to take more risk for a higher return. And so in your seat, you're trying to get the city council to award this project, but you're also looking to give your investors the highest return you can. Now, at some point, if you're giving them too much of a return, they're not going to believe that that's feasible, that it's real. So I think that your return number actually looks pretty good. But if I was an investor on that side of things and I was asking you questions, I might say, well, why didn't you push these other numbers a little more? We might have been able to squeeze a little more out of it. I think that part of your answer lies in the fact that you went very heavy on residential. If you really look at it, you've gone heavy on retail, which is your amenities, and that links back to your vision statement of being heavily amenitized. And then you went heavy on your retail. So there's just not a lot of office in your district. And that's okay if that's a part of your strategy, which I think it is.
It is.
But just make sure that you can clearly articulate that, because if somebody else comes in with a higher return to their investors, the city council may have to make a value decision by saying, well, we want a more residential commercial district than a more commercial district, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm asking you these questions. Why are we leaving risk on the table? Why are we heavier here or not?
I'd like to give my point of view to those questions. First of all, as you stated before, we have a homeless shelter in this community. And while there are numbers here, we know that due to the coronavirus, the stock market has crashed and people don't have as much income as they used to. Many people have lost their jobs. So right now it may seem as if we have a lot of space and a lot of risk that we're not acquiring. But the fact is that much like we didn't know how the coronavirus would impact our lives now, we don't know how the financial crisis that we've gone through will affect us in the coming years. So keeping our risk low will be safe, and that we know that there will be people to buy this. Because if we push it closer to the 3-year mark, you don't know if there will be the same amount of people before this pandemic started that are willing to buy and rent as there will be afterwards.
I think that's a good answer. I think if you can weave that story in terms of why now is not the time to take huge risks, and you weave that in with the basic story of your vision, I think that's a strong argument.
Thank you very much.
Timely and strong. So you guys should make sure that you're synchronized with that. That's what we would say. That's an astute answer. Okay. Let's go back to the plan for a minute, because I think your numbers are actually pretty good. You know, you may, if you have the time to test to see if you can squeeze a little more, you know, on the residential side, maybe try it. But if it takes you, you know, you start pushing higher than 16 plus 17, it starts to look questionable.
Toriel, can you pull back up the site plan, please?
I noticed that you included the skate park. And I would also like to understand what's happening inside of the York Dry Goods building. So let's start with the skate park. What was behind the decision there, and how do you think that skate park gets used, especially during COVID?
Can I answer that, or would you like someone else to?
It should probably be the neighborhood liaison. I think that was Daniel.
William is our neighborhood liaison.
I'm sorry, William. Let's hear from William on that.
We decided on the neighbor. I said, my bad. We decided on the skate park because it's a way like the community can come together, and it can offer a lot of opportunities as to, like the older generation can teach the younger generation, and I think that'll really help out the community as well. And yeah.
Was there a group who was not in favor of that park?
I don't think so.
I think you should look back and make sure that you didn't have any opponents to that park. And one way you might think about arguing for the park is how you might program it. Again, it's COVID world. You can't have too many people in one place at one time. I would think about maybe why or how that park could be programmed and controlled. You need some descriptors. I'm not saying it's the right or wrong decision to include it, but make sure that you have answers for those who are against it, answers for why it's a good thing, a little deeper than what you've given, and how that park can be programmed in a way that maintains control. So I would ask you to go back and make sure you understand fully what each of the neighborhood groups is thinking as you're arguing for or against that park. Let's pivot to the York Dry Goods, because I want to understand, and this might be for marketing as well, and the city liaison, what's happening inside of the York Dry Goods.
We haven't decided that yet, but we are going to decide our use soon.
What do you think your options are? What kinds of things could you include in there, and how would that benefit?
We're hoping to use the ability that you all have given us, that the Yorktown dry goods area will be used for, nothing is permanent, so we can use it to test out many of the different possibilities in the area. Right now, during the virus, we're thinking about putting in food distribution centers, testing centers and clinics, and really focusing on the community and how we can keep everyone safe and healthy while following CDC guidelines. And after the pandemic is over and after testing multiple groups, we can decide which would be best for the community.
What are some of the nearby city constituents, not in Yorktown, but on the edges, that you might be able to partner with once the pandemic is over? And could those constituents help you right now?
William, do you think you could go through our neighborhood letters and answer that?
Or you can look on your map, and you can kind of, what else is happening in the city within the vicinity of your neighborhood?
So guys, we talked about this earlier on. We said like, what was to the east of the city? What happened, or to the district? What happened to the east of the district? What was in the west of the district? What was north of the district? We marked that up on the RFP.
If you look at that plan, it's telling you what's happening to the east.
Is this still closed to the marketing director and city liaison, or can I chime in?
For time's sake, you can all chime in. But when these kinds of questions come up, really that's for your site planner. It could be your city liaison as well, and your marketing director, because we're talking about what you're filling New York dry goods with. But if you think about what's happening to the east of you, and you start bringing that in, that's going to touch all three of those positions. One thing when you guys go in front of city council, you have to really be clear on is each of your roles and who's going to talk about what and who's going to field which specific questions, and everybody's got to be willing to step up. And there should be one or two other people who can provide backup if necessary, but each of you has to play your role. So, it's really for the marketing guy, because he's responsible for for leasing and filling New York goods, right? So that would be my primary person. So I'll tell you that there's a university to the east of you, and you could think about what partnership opportunities there are with that one entity, right? Universities do all kinds of things, and that might be one place that you could target. But even aside from the university, what else might you put in there that the community may want? Remember, you have community constituents, and that's where the neighborhood guy now.
Guys, you also put stuff on your use allocation sheet.
So as for what other things can be put, your question was, what were some other things that we could put into the community that the residents could take advantage of, right?
After the pandemic, because you've answered what's happening during the pandemic, but you need to have a plan for after the pandemic.
Okay, so a part that I don't think we've mentioned yet about this district that we wanted to employ was relates to the homeless shelter and to that Employment Development Services office that's on the corner right next to Block 2. So we'd like to partner with them and the homeless shelter to try to re-engage people into this new economy, because after the pandemic, the world is going to change completely, and everything's starting to be online now when it comes to businesses. So we want to help to use those office and the employment development areas to train the citizens in these updated and these quickly growing fields, so they can be re-implemented back into society and into this new workforce. And that could also tie into the university as well, with them hosting some of the classes or allowing us to use their professors to help teach these if they do cover those courses, and initiating people back into these business practices. One other thing is in the parks, we also, and for the Q-Mart afterward, to have part of the green space on top of the Q-Mart and the recreational space be developed to gardens and such as like community gardens that the community can then use for themselves or to sell outside in like community markets and stuff like that. So I see we're running out of time though.
Yeah, Margie just told me we're running out of time. I just want to say a couple things before I get booted out, and that is make sure each role can articulate the questions that they're asked. So you really know, if you're the neighborhood liaison, you need to understand each of what those neighborhood groups want. For the marketing person, think deeply about how you're selling and marketing each of those product types to the people you're renting them to, right? And for the city liaison, understand what the city council is really going to want. I think you guys are pretty good with your vision and how your plan ties to it. But remember, when you get in front of that city council, you got to sell it with confidence, okay? They're going to be sold based on your confidence as well. So I think you guys are in pretty good shape. I hope this has been helpful.
Definitely.
I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again after you win.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All right?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
good luck with it.
All
Thank
right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Of course. Thank you, Margaret. Are you putting me back into the